We are learning more and more about the lead up to the devastating mass shooting in Highland Park, Illinois that occurred on the 4th of July during a 4th of July parade, specifically about the shooter himself and what variables led him to being able to have access to a weapon that would give him that ability to do such damage. So before we get into that, I will be honest, I'm less interested in the specific details about the shooter's life. I think a lot of times we have this cultural tendency to celebritize mass shooters, which is the exact opposite of what we should be doing, because I do think that encourages other deranged individuals who have some ambition to be recognized, to be heard, to be seen, to conduct these types of violent acts to get that attention, and I would not want to contribute to that. So unless there are very relevant details about him that I think we need to be aware of to prevent future tragedies, such as what radicalized him, did he have any particular ideology, etc., then otherwise I don't really want to look into, because I don't think it benefits us, showing a bunch of photos of him or diving into specific personal life details. But a relevant part of this is how he got a gun. Based on all the clear blinking LED signs that were blaring at people around him that he was a threat, he was still entrusted with such a dangerous weapon. So that's very important for us to understand and identify so that we can prevent future events like this. So on that note, as with many other of these young shooters we've seen recently, it did come down to people around him not taking his dangerous tendencies seriously and making him someone who's able to get their hands legally on a dangerous weapon. So we're about to dive into that, but I will just say, to make sure everyone is clear about what I'm trying to say, at the end of the day, yes, it is the individual's fault. All of the responsibility should land on the shoulders of the person who carried out these acts, of course. But it is still very valuable to look into what could have prevented this kind of damage, what could have prevented someone who was dangerous, who did have these terrible aspirations, from getting a tool that allows them to do that so effectively. And obviously effectively in the most negative sense of the word. And so that's where this conversation around gun control comes in, the specific red flag laws and the implementation of them that we should be looking at. And that's where this all kind of comes into play. So with that being said, reading from NBC News, Highland Park shooting suspect Robert E. So the mass shooter, I don't think repeating his name much time is relevant. So his father, quote, may have responsibility in certain circumstances for his son's deadly actions, police say Wednesday, while stopping short of tying the dad to any criminal culpability. So they're looking into the dad because he clearly acted irresponsibly in his management of his son, in his management of giving his son a assault rifle type weapon. The 21-year-old suspect was too young to get a gun permit in 2019 from the state of Illinois, but his father sponsored one for him despite previous threats by his son to harm himself and loved ones, authorities have previously said. So he wasn't quite old enough yet to get a gun, but his dad helped him get one. The shooter was still under 21 in 2020 when he purchased the AR-15 style weapon allegedly used in Monday's attack, a purchase he could only make because his father sponsored his firearm owner's identification application. Again, people around an individual who had shown dangerous tendencies were helping him, sponsoring him in his attempt to get a dangerous weapon. The shooter's dad is a formal mayoral candidate in Highland Park and has voiced support for Second Amendment protections. He co-signed for his son's FOID application in December 2019, 3 months after police visited the family's home because a relative reported that the shooter had threatened to kill his family members, the Illinois State Police said. So the police had been called to the guy who would eventually become the shooter to his house because he was threatening to harm himself, harm those around him. And yet still after that dangerous incident, his dad helped him get a gun. At the time, 16 knives, a sword, and a dagger were confiscated, but the suspect wasn't arrested because family members declined to sign any complaints. So the father characterized the incident as a childish outburst in an interview with the New York Post. He insisted he didn't do anything wrong and said he sponsored his son's application because he thought the firearm use would be limited to the shooting range. So why is this so crucial? Well, because those around him, notably his dad, didn't take his previous destructive actions seriously and then actively helped him to get a dangerous weapon, more people are dead that wouldn't have been otherwise. And that is what we see in a lot of these mass shootings. They aren't criminal masterminds who would have found a way to get an AR-15 or something like it by any means necessary, no matter what the laws were. No, these are disturbed kids who are showing signs of being potentially destructive and then given and supported in legally getting access to a gun that becomes a murder weapon. So if we did have more effective and agile systems, as well as a citizenry that took this issue seriously and would not give a gun to their kid if he was showing these signs, again, the police were called because this individual was threatening people's lives, then we could have saved lives after that event. We could have saved lives in Highland Park, Illinois over the weekend. So another disturbing aspect of this is reading shortly after Monday's mass shooting in Highland Park, Illinois, that left at least 7 people dead and more than 3 dozen injured. The alleged shooter drove up to Madison, Wisconsin, and seriously contemplated executing another attack, according to the Lake County Sheriff's Office. So he allegedly was considering, after the Highland Park shooting, going directly to Madison, Wisconsin, and carrying out another mass shooting. So clearly quite disturbed, as obviously we are quite aware of. So I mean, I guess I'm glad that didn't happen, but it shows you how much damage this person was longing to do. I think the takeaway is we absolutely do need systems in place that can identify people who are potentially harmful to themselves or others and then restrict their ability to get dangerous killing machines. But we don't just have to have those systems in place. The implementation and the execution of those systems have to be effective enough that not only is it on the books that people who are showing these dangerous tendencies shouldn't have guns, but actually law enforcement is carrying that out and making sure people don't have dangerous weapons if they're clearly a threat to themselves and to others. But also, I think this story does put into our heads and should remind us that we need to be educating the population on how crucial it is that if you want a firearm, you have to be extremely careful with your own guns and with your decision to support or not support your children getting guns, so that we can all be safer in this country. So I think better education societally wide about, if you want a firearm, this is what you have to do to be safe with it, is crucial to make sure that we all stay safe.